promised, today we have a powerful show. We're joined by uh, Comrade Paul Coates. Paul Coates is
Mm.
a freedom fighter, a
Mm.
publisher, community archivist, and he spent over 5 decades at the forefront of Black liberation struggle. A veteran defense captain of the Black Panther Party's Baltimore chapter. Coates
Mm.
transitioned from community defense to intellectual warfare in 1978 by founding Black Classic Press. We're honored to have you on here today, brother. How's everything going?
I'm doing well, Brother Kalonji. Very, very well.
Man, listen, we've been
And pleased to be with you, brother. Pleased to be with you.
man, I'm totally honored, and I just spoke to our comrade Rosemary Mealy, and that's how
Ah,
we made contact. So I wanted to add that. Um,
got it.
there's so much to talk about in so little time. I wanted to certainly start off by, um, we mentioned that you're a veteran of the Black Panther Party, and we talk about Baltimore. And Baltimore, many of us who have been active, we are quite familiar with the Baltimore chapter. But when it comes to the Panther Party as a whole, oftentimes you only hear about certain sections, right? So I want
Mhm.
to ask you how you became involved in the Black Panther Party, and what prompted you to go in that direction.
Like so many other young people, and I was young, but older than many of the other party members. I was young, I had just come out of the military. I was probably about 21, I think, something like that. And again, that's older than many of the other party members who were 17, 18 years old. I was fueled by my reading before going into the party, my understanding of our history, my understanding of the struggle in front of us, and I wanted to pour my life into a vehicle that I felt was making a difference. And I felt the Black Panther Party at that time was the best option for that. So I engaged with the party in Baltimore, worked with the party there, and worked with the party on the West Coast as well, and gave it all I had until I couldn't do it no more.
Right on, right on. I know that there was intense surveillance during that time period. And to my understanding, the Black Panther Party of Baltimore, um, I've heard that it was some of the founding members were part of the NSA, um, and I understand that it became an issue, and one particular brother, Marshall Eddie Conway, actually became a victim of this counterinsurgency. Can you speak to us about who Eddie Conway is, and also the founding and how this whole conundrum came about?
Yeah, you pretty much have the founding of the Baltimore chapter correct, and this is well documented. The federal government set up the Baltimore chapter. National Security Agency had an employee at that time, Warren Hart, and he was in fact the founder and the first defense captain of the Black Panther Party. There was a thing between he and Eddie in which Eddie had written, he had traveled to the West Coast, in fact, to try to get a better handle. I don't think he was calling Hart out directly as an agent at that time. I think what he was trying to bring to the attention of the party was that the party in Baltimore was not operating right. They were doing things of a renegade nature. He came back from the West Coast, and shortly after that, he was involved in a um, a police action in which there were two members of the Baltimore City Police Department who were one was killed, one was wounded. They pinned that on Eddie and two other brothers. Eddie is the one who we always insisted, because he insisted largely that he had nothing to do with it. And I think over time, his insistence bore out. He was eventually released from jail after doing 44 years. But the thing is, you do have to go back. You're probing in the right direction. The Baltimore chapter um, there were a number of chapters that were supposedly set up by the government, but the Baltimore chapter is the one that is very well documented. That informer who set up the chapter, who set up Eddie, left Baltimore and went into the employ of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. You know, COINTEL sent him as a good operator. He went to Canada, and in Canada, he has a history in Canada in which he testified. He there was a he was suing the Royal Canadian Mounted Police at one time, and he testified how he came up there as an agent. And he testified in some of the cases that he had been helpful in setting other people up in Canada. Because, of course, Canada was very, the activity in Canada, Toronto, particularly at that time, um, and in Ontario, but Toronto was connected to the party. Many of those people would come across and attend party events. Kwame Ture and other people spent a lot of time in Canada with the Caribbean and African students that were there. This agent, Warren Hart, set up a number of them, and a number of them did time just like Eddie did in Baltimore. This stuff is well documented.
You know, I'm listening to you, and the one thing that we can say for certain, for sure, is that the U.S. government wastes no parts of the animal. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm thinking about Gene Roberts, the agent who was operating as Malcolm X's bodyguard, as one of the guards in the
Mhm.
Audubon ballroom that day, that fateful day. And I'm thinking about the fact that he was a New York boss agent. And this same man later on joins the Black Panther Party in New York, and he is responsible partly for setting up members of the Black Liberation Army, et cetera. Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, we hear these things, and usually we don't hear about the Warren Harts, we don't hear about the Gene Roberts. Today, 2026, this is a lesson that should be learned, you would think. But what is your take on modern counterinsurgency? Do you feel like COINTELPRO is dead, or folks need to wake up and grab more of those books from Black Classic Press?
Yeah, I mean, folks definitely need to grab more books from Black Classic Press, but our history is a history of infiltration. It's a history of our oppressors using um, uh, people who say they are aligned with us against us. I mean, this is the history. When we go back into the early days of our enslavement, we find this. These are the same tactics that our oppressors used among themselves. And so they simply, like when you really deal with the history of African people in the early resistance movements, and I'm talking about early resistance movement. I'm talking about in this hemisphere. I'm talking about in places like Guyana. I'm talking about Haiti. These places in which successful um, revolutions were held, you always find the oppressor inside them manipulating people. It's no different today, regardless of what the name is. Like people say COINTELPRO doesn't, maybe it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't matter. The folks who are in power intend to hold on to power. And one of their more effective uses, this is what we saw in the Congo, of course, against Patrice Lumumba, like using those who are easily disposable, who they have complete distaste for themselves, but these people are aligned in our community and they become easy tools. And it's all about the money, it's all about power. And this is something that we have to build an awareness of. I don't know how we effectively combat it, but we absolutely have to build an awareness of. And brother, I just said that. I just said I don't know how we effectively combat it, but that's not really true. Here is the deal. As much information comes out about infiltrators being in the Black Panther Party, we have to look at the successes of the Black Panther Party. I look at when I was defense captain in Baltimore, we had different levels. There was one level that I was the only person that knew what was happening. There would be another level that there might be one other person. And then there was a level that there would be three people who knew. And then there was a level down that everyone might know this information. I was recently looking at my FBI files, and on the one hand, you see a lot of informers providing information to the FBI and COINTELPRO, that whole thing. You see that. But because I was there, I know what's not in there. I know the information they didn't have. We have had successes like that all over the country with the party, and we have to look at how we can recreate those successes, because I do think that that becomes one of the most effective tools that we can use in terms of maintaining information.
Absolutely. COINTELPRO proofing it, right? I want to ask you because, again, there's some listeners right now. Again, folks, you're checking out Law and Disorder right here on KPFA. And I'm your host, Kalonji Changa, filling in for Cat Brooks. And we have our guest today, Paul Coates, who is a veteran Panther, amongst other things, right? I want to ask you, brother, how long did it take for you all to realize? What was the time process like? And what happened after Eddie was trapped? Did you all end up purging the chapter, or what does that timeline look like? And were you all aware that he had been set up by the time, during that moment, during that time?
So a lot of this stuff was revealed over decades. The chapter was purged even before I came, because this happened, the thing with Eddie and the setup with Hart. I never knew Hart personally. That stuff happened before I came to the chapter. Eddie, before Eddie was arrested, when he got back from California, the party sent in operatives from the party to come through and purge the chapter. They did that. So let's say that was in July. The next year is when Eddie actually is charged with the police killing, because there was another informer that was killed around that July time.
Wow.
Which is an interesting thing. This is an informant that was killed. He was held, he was tortured in Panther headquarters. All of that's documented. But there were 6 different government informers informing to 6 different agencies that was involved with the torture and eventual killing of this guy. Look, we didn't find that out until after Eddie was charged. Some other people went to trial. During that trial, there was one lawyer here in Baltimore that just broke all of this stuff open, and exposed the agents that had been in the room. They would torture the guy and go out and report to their different handlers. 6 different agencies. Baltimore police, there was naval intelligence. It was just crazy. But one way or the other, the guy was tortured, he was murdered. And at that time, we didn't know about it. It was only later that it came out during the trial that this had happened. It was one lawyer here in Baltimore, a brother by the name of Larry Gibson, that broke all of this open, and he exposed it. But even at that time, we didn't understand. We didn't understand the magnitude of this. That would have to come years later, how does all of this stuff work? So the chapter was, as you say, the chapter was purged, the chapter was recreated. By the time I came, which was during the fall of that same year, I came in as a community worker. It wasn't until the next spring that the police were killed and they decided to pin this case on Eddie, that I moved up as defense captain. So this is, I know it's a kind of a quick timeline that I'm giving you there,
Yeah.
but even then we still didn't know. It would take years later for us to really understand that Hart was the agent that he was, because that information wasn't available. He didn't do the case with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. That case wasn't until I think 1976. You see what I'm saying? So, so and stuff will still come out, I'm sure.
So that was probably around the church hearings around there, right?
It was, it was right about which is real interesting because the church hearings in this country influenced Canada to hold hearings themselves on similar domestic violations of the citizens. And
Right.
it was Hart testifying against them to help them because he had a beef with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They hadn't paid him his money. And
Wow.
at some point, not only did they not pay him his 30 pieces of silver, they put him out of the country. You
Wow.
see what I'm saying? So he was pissed. And
Yeah.
so, given an opportunity to go up and expose this stuff and testify, he went to Canada and exposed. And you're correct to put it right around the time of the church committee.
Man, listen, there's no loyalty amongst thieves. We know that. Um, you just messed me up with the 6 different agencies. Again,
Oh,
I knew
God.
about the NSA piece, but this is important because, brother, I look at a lot of the uh, younger organizers, right? My folks we're a generation after you all. I was born in '70, but I have grandchildren. So we're looking at this thing and we're saying, okay, for some reason, and I know this even with a lot of the elders who were victims of COINTELPRO, they still operate as if, that was a thing of the past. So it's kind of weird and perplexing. I want to, and we're going to move on, but this is the 60th anniversary of the Black Panther Party. If there were, what would you have done differently, or what are some things that you think could have been done differently?
I don't know. Brother, I take a view of history like things occur as they occur, and we needed those things to happen. So I don't know what could have changed because the bringing together of the Black Panther Party was like a stew. You know what I mean? Like there were elements thrown in on that joint, man, and everybody got different flavors, and you got what you got. You know, I talk about the thuggishness of so many people like Huey P. Newton, who I really believed at this stage was a thug. He was a politically minded thug, and at different times the thuggishness would be more prominent than the brilliance of the politics of the people. But I don't think you could have had a Black Panther Party unless you had that ingredient. I don't think you could have had it unless you had that crazy ass Eldridge Cleaver. I don't think you could have had that mixture. And Eldridge used to say something like that. I mean, I can't remember the exact quote, but the point is you had to be crazy to be out in those streets talking about you're going to take on the U.S. Army. You know what I mean? What kind of, if somebody jumped in the street right now, you say that Negro is crazy. You know what I mean? He's talking about fighting the army. You
Right,
know,
right, right.
you're talking about the police. You're talking about, I don't care who you throw at us. We ready for them, knowing you ain't ready.
Right.
That's a bit of insanity. And so I think if you try to go in and change some elements, you lose the insanity and you lose the moment. I think that moment is bright and crystal for us, and we can continue to look at it as you would look at a crystal and get lessons from it that hopefully strengthen us as we go forward. But I wouldn't spend much time trying to change anything.
I appreciate you definitely not romanticizing, because I think that oftentimes, that's what we look at. We look at revolution in a uh, in a romantic, this is, we glorify and we gloss over some of the issues. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, we have to deal with the past. We have to Sankofa in order to get to the future.
That's
I
right.
definitely
That's right.
appreciate you, sharing those words. I want to know, many see your transition from the BPP to founding Black Classic Press as a shift in tactics, not goals. How did your experience in the party shape your philosophy on intellectual self-defense?
That's a real good description of it, because many people in the Panther Party went on to do many things, but they never lost the sight of what they had been looking at. The naked, um, just the nakedness of this state, which now we can say fascist, but for us it was fascist then. We never lost sight of that. So yeah, it was a shift, and it was partly because that experience with the Black Panther Party. I didn't when I went to California to get support for brothers who were in jail like Eddie Conway. I didn't get that. I got that the people in California, the Panthers in California, were occupied with what they were occupied with, and I wasn't getting any help there. He wasn't getting any help there. I had to go back and put together an organization that would support him. And I can only count on myself to do that. I can only count on one, maybe two other people to do that. So I had to construct something that I could maintain. And when I say I could maintain, it went down to the individual. It's the whole thing. Like we used to have this thing in the party about Juche, like me and you start out to do something, you go left on it. I still got to go ahead and do this thing. So how do you build a vehicle to do that? That vehicle became the George Jackson prison movement for me, which eventually changed the name to Black Classic Books. I'm not Black Classic Books. I'm sorry, The Black Book, which was our bookstore, and then eventually Black Classic Press. That was designed. In other words, I designed a bookstore, I designed a publishing company, I designed a printing company, eventually still to create books and material that went at our enemy, our recognized enemy. And I still do that today.
We're definitely grateful. I used to order books from you actually. Back in the day, we had a bookstore up in Connecticut, in Bridgeport. And so back in the early 2000s,
yes, yes.
We definitely.
What was the bookstore? What was the bookstore in Bridgeport?
Well, it was actually a hemp shop. It was called Hemp 2000, Hemp for the World.
2000. Got it.
Yeah. So
Got it.
We would actually get books from you, and of course A and B, and
Got it.
a few other
yes,
press.
yes,
Definitely.
Yes.
It was so it's great to, and I didn't even know the history at that time. So that's how cold this thing is. So definitely, we appreciate that part of the work.
Sure.
I want to, you resurrected works by folks like Bobby Seale and Dr. John Henrik Clarke. Why is it a revolutionary act for Black people to own the physical means of production, the actual print and press, and not just the digital content?
Yeah. Hakeem, who is a mentor to me and who started publishing long before me, says, and I agree with him completely, if you want to be a revolutionary, write somebody a paycheck. You start writing paychecks, and that's a revolutionary act. You will, in fact, impact on a whole generation of lives. It was one of those things. And I lost. I'm sorry. I went off on that. Restate your question because I lost your question. I got to figuring out how key and the whole piece on revolution. I know we're in that area, but I want to try to get back to it more exactly.
Yeah. Now I was just asking, why would it be a revolutionary act?
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So the real deal is it's a revolutionary act. Like if we're talking about publishing, if we're talking about getting the word out, it's a revolutionary act to do anything to control our narrative. This is what it all comes down to me, and this is my simple take on it. Like some people would say the means of production, I'm saying our narrative, our story. And that is our ability to define who we are in the world and how we stand up in the world and how things look to us in the world. So to be able to do that with my voice and my presence is a revolutionary act as far as I'm concerned. And I don't use the word revolution lightly, okay? But it is. So to be able to do that in a mass way, to be able to control our narrative in a mass way and shape our narrative and not be dependent upon others, I think that's one of the critical pieces of any people who are free. It doesn't matter what that narrative is. If you're free, you get to say what that narrative is, and other people do not impose on you and tell you what you can and what you cannot do. I think that goes down to family. I think it goes to community. I think it goes to individual. I think it goes to state. And I think it has to be a core organizing principle of how we raise ourselves and how we raise our families. We have to understand that narrative is sacred. Narrative is saying we're not talking about things here. We're really talking about existence. And to exist is to allow someone else to know that they can do it. It's one of those things. So narrative is really, really important. The control of writing, the control of publishing, the control of printing makes a full circle. And I will tell you that, one of our largest achievements has been in the printing. And we're able to do that for radical presses, non-radical presses, active Black presses. We're able to help them complete the circle on shaping their narrative and putting their narrative in the world because we do print.
Right on. And we're glad that you do print. I was actually just speaking to someone yesterday about, matter of fact, we were at the last ports. We were talking about the need to have that physical copy in hand. This digital thing is a whole nother
Yeah.
universe, and that may work for some, but for me,
Yeah.
turning those pages, kind of takes it to another level.
Yeah.
You recently, and again, folks, you're checking out Law and Disorder. Kalonji Changa here, filling in for Cat Brooks. Our guest is Paul Coates, who has a wealth of knowledge and information, veteran Black Panther, founder of Black Classic Press, amongst other things. And he is also someone who recently led a high-level delegation to Cuba. So I want to ask you, Brother Paul, given the current geopolitical tensions, why is it vital for Africans here in America, organized in particular, to maintain a direct line of solidarity with the Cuban Revolution?
So what you're saying, and I just want to adjust one thing. I don't know about high level delegation because like we were community folks engaged in
That's high level to
publishing.
me, bro.
Look, and I agree. Along we got the same thing going here. But look, here is the deal. It's important for us to maintain a dialogue and an appreciation and a communication with wherever there's struggle going on, because ultimately in this world, what we're seeing is that there is a class of people that want to own us, you know, and they extend it, whether it's in the Congo, whether it is in Gaza, whether it is in the United States, or whether it's in Cuba. And we have to align ourselves with those folks who are struggling. It just so happens that Cuba is an obvious one for us, and one that Black Americans here have to really align themselves with because we owe such a great debt to Cuba. How do you have an island that is less than 50 minutes away from here, less than 50 minutes away from here, and it be seeped in so much African culture that we don't connect to that? It's like saying, Philadelphia is that distance. It's like one of those things. But the point is, Cuba, the part that gets me is Cuba is already aligned with us. It's already demonstrated. It's already shed its blood in Africa. It has put everything it has on the line for African Americans who have gone to Cuba seeking refuge from fighting up here, like we fight here and then we run to Cuba and we say hi to us, take care of us, shelter us. And Cuba said, come on, come on. When Barack Obama tried to do that thing with Assata, and that thing that I'm talking about, if people don't know, is one, he tried to trade Cuban integrity for Assata Shakur, and he wanted to pay money for it. He wanted to open up even more channels than he did. He said, all you got to do is send Assata back. And Cuba said, no, we're not doing that. Our principles cannot be bought. So Cuba has for decades demonstrated that they were ready to fight for African Americans. They were ready to fight for Africans. They were ready to fight for people who were oppressed around the world. If we recognize oppression here, if we recognize oppression on the continent, if we recognize oppression in any other place, we have to recognize how Cubans are being not only oppressed, they are being murdered. And they're being murdered by the actions, just like those bombs are dropping in Iran right now, and our money is funding it. The Cuban people are suffering in a different way. They're just not getting bombs. They're just having their society just torn out from under them. You're talking about people who go to work every day, like you and I, who no longer can go to work, who no longer can take care of their babies, who can't even get medical care because this government and that orange man is in charge. He can't do that in my name. He can't do that in my name. And I would ask anyone of conscience, I would ask, do you want him doing that in your name? If you don't, then you're aligned with Cuba too. You have to be aligned with Cuba. So I'm a little passionate about that, as you can tell.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned Obama, because of the fact that, we're, unfortunately, our people, they're on this whole, all things black are good, black girl magic, this and that, so on and so forth. When in fact, as our now ancestor, Imam Jamil Alameen, formerly H. Rap Brown, would say, to be black is necessary, but it's not sufficient. Okay, so we don't get caught up in that. We understand.
That's very good.
We understand his role as well as others, the Kamala Harris, and so on and so forth, Condoleezza Rice, etc. Having seen the reality on the ground, how do you describe the quiet war being waged against Cuba through sanctions, and how does this mirror the economic containment used against Black communities in the U.S.?
I don't know about the last part. Let me do go to Cuba. I will tell you this. We came back for Cuba, and for the first 5 days, there was not a day that I did not cry. Okay. I found myself, I couldn't talk about Cuba without crying. And again, Cuba's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And the people are even more beautiful than the natural landscape. And when you go to Cuba, the first thing you become aware of is the dominating presence of African people. Cuba is an African, as if I went to East Baltimore or something like that. You know what I mean? And you become aware that these people have this resilient spirit, even though they are being denied, in some cases, 22, 23 hours without power. We can't even think, if a storm happens in this country and we lose power for a day,
right,
we can't even think about it. And people know what happens. If you lose power, you lose your refrigerator. You lose the ability to wash clothes. You lose the ability. Well, think about it along the lines of that happening within the house. But then think about it across society. You don't have gas in your car that even if you had a job, you can get to work. One of the things that impacted on me, Cuba Cuba has one of the best education systems in the world. And education has always been a priority since they threw out the criminals. The idea that students on one side or outside of Havana could not get to the University of Havana to go to medical classes, that doctors in the hospitals have to operate with flashlights. The whole notion of this, that drugs, painkillers, and things like that are, noticeably absent. All of these things are impacted by the United States. All of them are impacted by the historic embargo, but then the embargo and blockade that has been running for 60 years. We have to see ourselves, I'm speaking as Black people, as people of conscience beyond Black, we have to see ourselves as being responsible in this matter. And even if we can't defeat them right now, we have to throw in and recognize the need for the aid that we can help Cuba with. We as individuals can. We need to be able to use the laws, existing laws. It's perfectly legal to go to Cuba. I talk to people every day who don't understand that. And the Cuban people want you to come. They want you to come because they're sure once you see what's happening there, you will be turned around just like my children and my grandchildren were turned around who went on this trip with me. It took them to get on the ground, but when they got on the ground, said, Dad, I got it. I got it. And they became supporters.
Amen. We definitely appreciate you all going out. Sounds like it was an amazing experience, but at the same time, it also sounds like a lot of work ahead. We have about 2 minutes, Brother Paul. Now, I'm definitely going to invite you back on because, we can go on and on for days. I know we just, touched the base of the iceberg. We didn't get nowhere near the tip. But you mentioned your children. So, I'd be remiss not to mention this other guy we know, your son, Ta-Nehisi. He's become one of the most influential writers of his generation. I want to ask how much of his critique of the dream and American mythology was forged at your dinner table or in the stacks of Black classic.
So I missed the last part. Can you repeat that, please? How much of the dream?
Critique of the dream and American mythology was forged at your dinner table or in the stacks of Black classic press.
I don't know. I don't, here's the thing. I take credit for feeding that boy beans, right?
Okay.
And putting books in the room.
Right.
That's about all I take credit for. I don't know. He and I actively have always engaged in discussions and debate. But brother, what I think and what I tell people like whenever people say, well, look, you really raised this boy. That's not true. You have to think about your children, for example. There are certain things you did for them. There are certain lessons you gave them, but then they had to get the lessons themselves. You see what I'm saying? Once they got the lessons themselves, then they deal with it. Well, the way they get the lessons is they interact in the world. It's the community. Now you could say that I steeped him in my community. Yes, that's true. I did that. And my community shaped him. His first book that he deals with, The Beautiful Struggle, he talks about that community. He talks about what it is to come up with the mamas and the babas and the expectations that those people put on him. So he got a narrative at home, but really, I am grateful. I'm grateful that our community raised up a voice, raised up someone who understands the importance of narrative and who is constantly speaking in our interest. But that's something that I don't think you can do. I don't think I could do. I think, it's like that old adage, you need a village, a village to raise a child. And I think that's what you see. His writings always say that. People miss it, but his writings always say that his responsibility is to Black people. And he'll say that over and over again. I write for Black people. I'm writing a narrative for my community, for my people. If other people get benefit from it, great. But my point is to do that narrative for my people. I think that's one of the highest commitments that any of us can take on, to work in the interests of our community, not forgetting other people. not the getting of the communities, and not to say they're not important because they are, but you got to have some level of commitment, a high level of commitment to your community first.
Brother Paul, we appreciate you coming on here today. We appreciate you upholding the village. We've been checking out Paul Coates from Black Classic Press, Veteran Panther. Make sure you run this back because of the fact that there's some jewels in it. I am Kalonji Changa. This is Law and Disorder, KPFA. We're filling in for Cat Brooks. Hold tight. We'll be right back at you.